Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We're broadcasting to you from all over the world today, and we are excited to talk with you today and to present this webinar on streamlining your lease accounting processes with accelerators for switching to SAP CLM from a third-party solution. We're also going to see some really great visuals around disclosures and analytics, so look forward to that. Want to remind everybody that the webinar is being recorded, so you can check it out later on or download it and share it with your friends and colleagues. Feel free to ask questions throughout the session right here. There's a question panel in your little panel thing there. And you can download previous webinars from our home page. So you can go right here to bramasol.com. We'd love to have you go there. We're just getting started with revamping some of the menus and navigation, so it should make things easier for you to find stuff there. Also check us out on Facebook or LinkedIn. We have a whole bunch of groups around leasing and some new content we're posting. And you can learn about some of the work that we're doing around SAP S/4HANA and finance and business transformation. I would also love to see everybody here, or folks subscribe to our Apple iTunes or through iHeartRadio to our Insight to Action podcasts and our Big So What podcasts. I think you'd really enjoy those. And as well, you can check out some of our videos here, customer stories and multiple videos here on YouTube. So today I am privileged to have three of our most knowledgeable folks on leasing in the organization, and probably in North America. We have one of the leading practices here in SAP leasing, and that is both lessor and lessee accounting. Today we're going to focus on lessee accounting, and we'll talk about what's going on there in a little bit. We'll give you a highlight of SAP Contract and Lease Management solution, which we think is the premium solution for anybody in SAP for lease management. Then we'll get a great demo from Sarah Thompson, who will be showing us the accounting and reporting demo. And then Carlo, Julio, and I will also be talking a little bit about some of our accelerators. This says SLAN to CLM, but really it's any third party that you can use, any third party solution, and we'll make that transition to CLM easy and simplified. So with that, Julio, welcome. Good to talk with you again. What's going on in the world of leasing?
Yes, hi, John. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. So as a recap for ASC 842, so we knew about 5 years ago, the FASB and the IASB, basically they came out with revenue accounting, ASC 606 and IFRS 15. And we knew that right around the same time, they were considering a new leasing standard. So ASC 842, IFRS 16 in IFRS. And we know that basically, a lot of companies, a lot of filers have complained because, right after doing the whole diligence effort to get compliant in ASC 606 revenue accounting, 1 year later, companies had to basically comply with lease accounting standards. So, in February 2016, it came out with ASC 2016-2, which we all call ASC 842. So the leasing standard has been effective for a couple of years now. For public companies, it was December 15, 2018 for public entities, so 2019 going forward. And then what happened was, for all private companies, it was supposed to be 1 year later. But we know that based on the complaints by companies to the FASB, is that they said that this was too much for us, too much, revenue accounting was very challenging, and now lease accounting is just as challenging. So basically what the FASB did earlier last year was gave an extension. So for private companies, we know that the standard is this year at the end of December 31st, 2021. So that's why we thought it would be a good time, John, to have this webinar to really help customers who already have filed, or complied with ASC 842, probably using spreadsheets or other competitor systems, to really look at SAP CLM and see really what's the value proposition we are having today. So, John?
Absolutely, Julio. And I remember when you and I first started this journey 3-4 years ago, and we talked about the magic of $3 trillion in assets showing up on balance sheets all over the world and the impact that that's had. And of course, as you rightfully pointed out, excuse me, a lot of companies chose to do something quickly and easily using either third-party non-SAP solutions. That's what we mean by that, disconnected non-SAP solutions, or continuing on with spreadsheets. And we're running into lots more folks who really want to get into how can they optimize or improve their standards and their process. So as I said, the solution that we believe is the best in the industry today for overall, particularly if you're an SAP S/4HANA user, but even an SAP ECC user, is SAP Contract and Lease Management. And what's great about contract lease management is it is a natively integrated leasing solution. And what does that mean? Well, it means that it runs inside of SAP. There's no integrations required. There's no rationalizations required. It runs inside and it's part of SAP Core. So technically, when you buy SAP S/4HANA or ECC, you get REFX. And in REFX, which is known as flexible real estate or real estate management, um, the asset is there, the tool is there, and you just have to license those tools. And the licensing, um, frankly, and something you ought to all check out, the licensing for this has changed, become a little bit more outcomes based, if you will. It used to be by users. It's more outcomes based, based on rental units or based on number of leases or assets managed. So check that out. But it's fully integrated into ECC. It's managed through and works. It does the whole lease portfolio, lease administration, reporting, and payment generation. And you can turn these on and turn these off in some cases as you need, but it's directly integrated into the general ledger, into your accounts payable and receivable. So for those who are lessors, it integrates right into your payables, or for companies that are doing subleases, of course, it links right into your payables and of course into your receivables and all of that. And I probably said that backwards, so I will recant and restate that. For those who are lessees, you want to have it in your payables and linked all to your payables. And then for those who are subleasing or lessors, it's linked into your receivables. It also integrates into your controlling and profit center accounting. One of the great things about the tool, particularly for lessor accounting, but even for lessees, is you can really begin to look at analytics at the asset level, all the way down to if you're doing um, um, certain asset-based accounting for real estate or movables, you can really look at them at the asset and understand profitability and payments. And of course, it has full reporting and is integrated into the asset accounting modules. So really, it eliminates these financial interfaces. It reduces the amount of reconciliations that are required, particularly with areas such as interest rates, vendors, currencies, and all of that kind of stuff. So with that, I also want to talk a little bit about, so it is a complete solution. It is an end-to-end solution designed not only to provide end-to-end lease management and administration, but all of the lease accounting. So think of it as, the two sides of the coin or the two aspects. You want to be able to manage your assets, manage those leases, manage all of that, and then do the accounting. So it provides complete contract management for all different types of leases, both lease in and lease outs. It has leasing partners. In the case of the subject agreement, like things like cost centers, property, you can incorporate it into project systems using WBS elements, etc. It has high degree of flexibility for terms and conditions. You can do rent abatements, you can do common area maintenance. There's a whole bunch of aspects that you can manage in the contracts themselves, lease payments and cash flows, critical dates, and document management. It does valuations and classifications, and in fact, we have added some valuation and classification tools of our own, particularly around OTL, STL for lessors, also works for lessees, but you really want to be able to classify those leases and understand them better. And you can classify and has new valuation rules. calculate and report using net present value, depreciation, amortization schedules. It has automated lease modification tools so that you can make all kinds of lease modifications, as well as combining leases. So for example, if you have leases that may fall under a master contract, you can manage all of those, the umbrella contract, and then manage individual leases as well. It supports statistical valuation for non-SAP company codes. So for companies that have heterogeneous infrastructures, meaning you're on some SAP, some not SAP, you can manage statistical valuation. Some of our customers have also used statistical valuation to do some transitions, or in the case of companies that are doing mergers and acquisitions, part of the initial process is they may use statistical valuations initially, and then as they transition and bring that company onto their SAP infrastructure, they can then move that data over, and they've already been calculating it. You can support transition scenarios and, of course, create and link to the fixed assets as well. And because it's SAP, because it was developed with global companies like yours in mind, it is multi-GAAP. It does IFRS, it does US GAAP, of course. No surprise that it does German GAAP, but it also does, and I know that we recently have been working on projects with Korean GAAP, Chinese GAAP, all kinds of different Brazilian tax and Brazilian GAAP. It manages right of use assets and liabilities, customer vendor accounting, post depreciation, and does, as I said, a lot of the profit center accounting. Julio, any comments from you on the completeness of this? Any thoughts before we kind of move to the next slide?
Well, yeah, John, I think we meet a lot of customers who have multi-GAAP requirements, which is very important because if you look at IFRS 16, you look at ASC 842, they are not converged and they're very different accounting, they're different reporting. So I think having a system that feeds the data and the data can automatically pick up if I'm reporting IFRS 16 for a European country versus 842, and then actually consolidate as 842 if you're a US public company, but at the same time, you can give local stat reporting under IFRS in different countries. I think that's the power, at least from an accounting perspective, of doing that, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of tired accountants using spreadsheets trying to figure that out.
Absolutely, and particularly, we've been talking with a couple of customers about some of these things, and I think they find the power of this tool amazing, and particularly, I think one of the key differences is clearly, things like short-term, long-term leases or low-value leases, and there's some substantial difference. And of course, SAP has built that all in there. And another thing I want to mention about this solution is that it has been certified. So during the process of creating this solution, SAP went and asked PwC to do a certification. And what they certified was that when, and of course in quotes, when configured properly by a business partner who understands how to do this process, that the tool will calculate, make the appropriate calculations in regards to the multi-GAAP various gaps, whether it's IFRS 16 or ASC 842, that it will post the appropriate journal entries into the GL, and that any testing is done and is non-regressive, so it doesn't go back. Every time you implement the solution, it moves forward, and it does not break something that they've already fixed. So I think that's available to you. You can go on the SAP website and check that out if you want, or reach out to us and we can provide that information. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sarah. Good afternoon in your case, Sarah.
Thank you, John.
And we'll talk about, I'll tee up our favorite little funnel slide.
Perfect. Thanks, John. All right, so there's a couple things we're going to cover with a demo today. I'm going to start by discussing, John discussed with Julio what CLM is. We're looking at the simplification slide. Some of the biggest pieces about CLM is about the ability to handle the modifications. So handling the ability to bring in the original contract terms, the conditions, handling the multi-currency within SAP, utilizing all the currencies that you have within SAP. And then as changes happen, you're going to automatically be able to account for those adjustments and keep your company compliant with all of your leases. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like.
Okay, I will make you presenter.
Awesome.
There you go.
All right, can you see me, John?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, so when we come in, this is going to be your home screen for all of your leases. So being able to come in, manage those leases, have a full work list of what types of leases you want to look at. But more in particular, if I wanted to actually drill into one particular lease, I can drill across company code, find the contract that I'm actually looking for. If I wanted to create a new contract, create a contract with a template from this one, I could go into as well. But I'm just going to show you a contract that we already have created. When you come in, the best part about CLM is whether you're an everyday user or you're new to the process, SAP is going to walk you through a guided process for how you're going to utilize and see your leases. So on the general data screen, we can see everything that we need to upfront about this lease. So it's a vehicle lease. We can see the contract number. We can see who our partner is. Oh, my apologies. We can see who our partner is. We can see the terms, so start and end date, contract name, currency that we're working with, and then the status. So we've got an active contract here. And then all we have to do as we're entering in information, as you're coming in, you could have a different workflow set up within this process to kind of walk through and validate that the information that has been entered correctly. So I can walk through and just validate everything that's here. We've got our partner information. This is using SAP's business partners. Now, the business partner or vendor that we're working with is SAP master data. So within CLM, it utilizes all of SAP's master data to pull in the vendors that you guys will be utilizing for your leases. Then we have our terms and conditions. Terms and conditions set up your start and end date for your contract, allowing for you to see the term in months for how long of the contract we have. So we've got 71 months out there. The end of the term. This particular contract doesn't have a renewal, but if in some instance we wanted to add a renewal, then we'd be able to see that here within our contract. So this is where you can add the different types of renewals that are out there. One second. So we can add a renewal or a notice to any of the objects that we see here. When we talk about objects, object is the type of asset that you're leasing. So in this particular case, we're looking at a vehicle. So we have our contract object type, and then also the account assignment that we're working with. So where in particular are we able to assign this asset that is in our lease? So this is going into our operating cost center. SAP also handles differing measurements. So for example, if we had a lease here with a fleet of vehicles, we'd be able to take that one vehicle type that we have, and we'd be able to bring in a differing measurement, let's say of 25 trucks that we're looking at, Dodge trucks that we have, we'd be able to bring those in, and then that's actually able to be utilized in our conditions. So you can do different formulas to be able to calculate prices per vehicle in a fleet and have all of those in one particular contract. Your posting parameters. Your posting parameters are going to come from the vendor that you have, but you're actually able to view the frequency that you're going to be posting for this particular contract. So if we look at our frequency, not only do we see the vendor information, but we're able to see here, we're looking at once a month. You can change that per quarter, per year, however often you're going to be paying this particular lease. The calculation method, so whether it's every 30 days or 365 if it's by month. The due date, standard if you want to pay in advance and arrears, you're able to handle those frequencies per contract based off of the terms that you have set up. The next piece is going to be our conditions. So this is where you're actually setting up what you're going to be paying on this particular lease. So for example, here for just for this particular lease, we're paying $439 per month. So that's the fixed amount. We can come down here, we can see you can have validity dates on your conditions. So you can do step payments, step rent payments if you wanted to. You can also add different formulas. So you can pay amount per object if you've got multiple objects there. If you've got a differing measurement, so like I said, for the fleet, you could do a calculation of those differing measurements. We're looking at fixed amounts, per percentages. Those are all the options that you have for types of calculations of these rents. In addition to just the basic rent, we also have the ability to add in additional conditions. So there's incentives, present value, retirement. These are just a few. It could be service costs on the side, initial costs. Whatever additional conditions you may have, we can enter those in here to be able to bring those in per contract that you have. And those can be based on the different types of contracts. So for example, we're looking at vehicle contracts now, but if you've got building contracts or non-movables, you're able to bring those in, those types of conditions as well. The valuation parameters. So I heard earlier, if you guys were listening, you would have heard Julio and John talking about the multiple accounting principles, being able to handle posting to IFRS and local GAAP. So we've got local GAAP, we've got FASB 842, got the ability to do IFRS contracts as well. So we've got finance direct balance sheet contracts. You can post your contract to any or all of the above. So for this particular contract, we're just posting it to an operating lease under 842. When we set up our valuation, you can either create an asset in fixed assets when you're creating the valuation, or you can have an asset that is already created and you can bring it into the contract. Or like the other drop down is direct balance sheet. So there are a few different options as to how you're going to post this to your GL. Once the valuation has been run, you'll be able to come to the valuation screen, and there's always a log, a time, date, and user stamp on any valuation that has been run. So you'll see here we've got our contract valuation, the present value, the ROU. We're actually able to, if we wanted to simulate what that would look like, we can simulate what was out there. So we've got our asset. This is our asset number here, giving us our present value and contract value, what the depreciation of this particular contract is going to look like, the clearing amount, so that 439 that we saw on our contract per month, and then also the interest that we've been given when we gave our valuation number, so the 3.95. So that kind of walks us through end-to-end what a CLM contract looks like. Now, what I want to do is I want to take you in and actually discuss some of the reports. So John here, I'm actually going to keep the reins just while we transition, and then I will go back into the demo. So Julio, I would like you to assist me here as well as we kind of walk through some of these slides. So do you want to discuss a little bit about what Bramasol has done in adding additional disclosure reports to our list?
Yes, so when about 3.5 years ago, what happened was a lot of companies were trying to understand how they're going to comply with ASC 842, because the leasing standard, the disclosure points are vastly different than what people were accustomed to under ASC 840. So what Bramasol did, because we had a lot of customers at that time, they were converting and they were using systems or what have you to convert, but what they didn't fully understand was, well, what exactly do I need to disclose as part of my compliance exercise to prove or to show my investors, my auditors, or whoever is looking that I actually complied with the standard? So what we did at Bramasol is we looked at what does the FASB require? And what you see on the screen here, basically, the exact data points that is required by the FASB. So we took that as our starting point, and we worked forward on a project to say, okay, if we are using SAP CLM or whatever tool you're using, we will build a disclosure report package on top of SAP CLM. And we did that. So as you can see on the screen here, there are about 15 different data points that is required. And what our team did is they said, okay, for instance, the first line item says, what is my operating lease cost? What is my finance lease cost? We are created a report that pulls all the data directly from CLM. So that gives you two things. One, you can be assured that the data is correct and there's no APIs, there's no pulling into Excel and manipulating. It's coming directly from production of CLM in SAP. And secondly, what we did to make that even a better experience is we have, which Sarah will show you shortly, is we actually created the FASB report that actually looks like the FASB report. So, and what the good thing about that does is that there's drill down capabilities. So you may see the operating and finance lease cost, and then you may ask yourself, well, that looks kind of odd for this quarter. Why is it higher? Why is it lower? Well, guess what? Sarah's going to show you the beautiful functionality that you just double click on that line item and it takes you back into the production system. Sarah?
Awesome, thanks, Julio. Okay, so let's go in. Do you want to go through the rest of the slides now, or do you want me to go in and actually show it?
You can dive right in, Sarah. Dive right in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So let's show them exactly what we're talking about. So we have the ability to come in. So these are Bramasol IP. So these are the reports that we have created, like Julio said, specific for CLM. So we've got some of our selection criteria here. I actually have a variant already saved, so I can quickly just come and grab the variant that I have. What it's going to do is it's going to pre-populate what we're looking at. So we're looking at US GAAP, our company code and fiscal year that we have, and then our gain and loss, if we want to see that, or what currency we're working in. So there are multi-currency. If we're working with one particular company code, we can view any type of currency. If we've got multiple currency or multiple company codes we want to see, we can view those in group currency. And then as we go ahead and execute on our FASB report, what it's going to do is it's going to bring us to that summarized view that Julio was talking about. There we go. So what this has done is this is the review. This is the summarized view, giving us all of the data we need in order to do our disclosures. So if we start at the top, this is going to be summarized of all the different lease types that we have. So we've got finance leases out there, operating, short-term, low-value variable, all the different types of leases that we'll have. And this is where Julio was talking about drill-through capabilities. So all of these numbers that we see here, we can actually select on, and now we have drill-through capability into all of those leases and get all the way down into that contract view that we were looking at earlier. And then as we scroll down, Julio, I'll let you describe a little bit more on some of these areas that we also developed as, to give those numbers.
Yeah. So essentially what Sarah is showing on the screen here is a continuation of our FASB reports. You know, we showed earlier the operating lease expense from the P&L. What's actually on the screen here is what Bramasol developed, which is the weighted average calculations. Part of the new standard are these weighted average calculations broken out by discount rate, the IBR, and the lease term. And this is one of the most challenging areas that companies have, because basically what you have to do is you have to look at your whole lease portfolio and you have to essentially say, okay, what is the weighted average broken out by finance leases and operating leases, the same with IBR. So what Bramasol has done in its IP is develop these weighted average calculations automatically for you, again, coming out of CLM directly. So, Sarah?
Thanks, Julio. So some of the other reports that we have created, including some of these validation reports, we've got these validation reports. We can handle lease costs by validation period. We've got the borrowing rates. We can see the short term as well as the cash paid. One of the other big pieces that we have handled is adding in a maturity analysis. So being able to go in and see over the next 5+ years, what are our lease obligations going to look like? So again, we can grab a variant, we can see what type of currency we want to select, and we select our report. This is going to give us both from an operating and finance lease. Again, these reports can be done not just from how we've seen them from operating and finance, but they can also be from different types of contracts that you wanted to view. This is just what a lot of our customers have seen. So we can see here, we've got, see everything that's out there. Sorry, 1 second, I was cutting some of that off. So with those operating and finance leases, we can see the maturity over the next 5 years. We can also see the interest amount that is out there as well. So we can see from both an operating and finance perspective what we can expect for those operating and finance leases. So we can see here the next 5 years, total lease payment, as well as the imputed interest. So we've calculated those into the maturity analysis report.
Yes, a very important report, Sarah, because if you think about it, so that hasn't gone away with the transition from 840 to 842. So companies, again, need to have a point in time and look forward 5 years and give the reader of your financials, you know, what are the expenses for lease, what are the lease costs, cash lease costs that's going to be spent in the next 5 years. And then you also have to reconcile that to your balance sheet. So Bramasol, again, has done the reconciliation for you from the cash costs going out and the weighted average cost. So yeah, it's a very good and insightful report that gives the cash costs going forward for 5 years. Sarah?
Thanks, Julio. And then one last one I wanted to show is just additional cost analysis. So I can come in, I can quickly enter in the dates that I want if I wanted to do over a certain period. And this is just one last report that I'll kind of showcase with you guys, and then I want to get into some analytics before I turn it back over to Julio and Carlo. But this is just a report that can also bring in all of the costs that you have related to each individual contract. So we can see here by contract, by period that we're looking at, we can see that interest amount, the depreciation, the lease cost, all in one report. So when we were looking at earlier what the valuation is and the valuation for that particular contract, you actually have here a full report that's going to bring in all of those different areas into one report as well. So you can see all those costs. All right. So this slide just talks to a little bit of that drill through that we talked about with our first report. And then lastly, I just want to showcase some of the analytics and dashboarding capabilities. In addition to Bramasol creating disclosure reports, we have taken those disclosure reports and actually pushed those out into some dashboards as well. So some of the key areas I like to cover on those are, for example, contract details. We can see here quick and easy what the average contract length is for our different types of contracts. So for all of our leasing contracts, we can see here how long our leasing contracts are, same with contract expiry. So how many contracts do we have? When are they going to be expired? We've got 29 that are expired. Have we renewed them? Have we terminated them? We've got contracts that are coming up in the next less than 6 months, we can actually take a look at those contracts as well. So these are just a couple of examples, taking into asset analysis, vendor analysis, taking the information not only from CLM, but from some of those dashboard or from some of the disclosure reports and actually bringing those into dashboards that can be utilized to actually go ahead and forecast what you're going to be doing with your leases. Right. Julio, do you have any last comments on reporting, or can I turn it back over to you guys?
I just wanted to just say that from the analytics perspective, what we're trying to achieve in the lease accounting space is, everybody thinks that, it's just a, number of payments going out every month, but there's a lot of insightful information that you can gather, like Sarah was showing, which is basically, who are you paying these leases to? Is there a possibility? We've had customers use our reports to say, well, wait a minute, I'm paying the same vendor. I operate in 25 different states. I'm paying the same vendor in California as I am paying in Florida. And, if I go to him as a consolidated entity, maybe they can reduce my rates. And we found that during the COVID period, a lot of companies have been consolidating, changing vendors, trying to reduce costs. And just knowing who you're paying your leases to is very insightful, and that may help you to be able to consolidate as a economies of scale, or even switch out your vendor provider and find another property or find another vendor. So it's very important as you move forward, especially if you're paying, as John mentioned, trillions of dollars coming on the balance sheet over the next 5 to 10 years. So with that, I'll turn over to John and Carlo.
Sure, thanks, Julio. And I'm going to comment real quickly as we transition, Sarah, if you want to, we can do that. And I will see if I can show my screen again. Are you seeing my Accelerators to CLM screen? Sarah?
Yes, we are. Thanks, John.
Yes.
Awesome. Real quick on the analytics, and we have a couple of others. I encourage you to check out our other webinars on lease accounting and analytics. We have some great deep dives as well. And I love the analytics side, having come from a direct marketing background over the years and being able to drill down and drill through and answer questions. And I love that concept, Julio, of really being able to look at your portfolio. And we didn't show the map today, but you can also look at it globally and understand where your assets are globally and get a very interesting perspective on the balance of real estate leases versus movables leases globally, and it provides our customers with a lot of very interesting insights. In addition to the disclosures and all of the things that Julio and Sarah mentioned, we've developed a series of accelerators, having been deep experts, and I'm going to welcome to the conversation Carlo Maglanao. Carlo is probably one of the world, certainly North America's leading experts on SAP real estate and SAP contract and lease management. Carlo, you've been doing this for what, 20 plus years now?
That's right, John. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, welcome. So our accelerator program really contains two elements to it, and I don't know why it did that all by itself. So maybe you can talk about the two programs, and then we'll dive into the benefits of those programs, Carlo.
Sure, John. Yeah. So, folks, Bramasol has developed two ways to migrate lease data from your legacy system to SAP CLM. So Bramasol has like the first one here, a conversion tool that would extract lease information from your legacy system, save that to an extraction file, and the tool pulls that file, maps it to CLM data points, does its own validation, and loads it to create the lease contracts en masse in CLM. So that first tool works best really if at least about 99% of your lease data in your current system, whether it's Nakiza or other system, are in perfect shape or accurate. So otherwise, we go for the second tool. So Bramasol also developed an upload program that uses an upload template in Excel where users can input all required data points, and then the upload tool validates the data and once validated, the data is automatically uploaded into CLM. So the upload tool, the second one, is the much favored option due to the combination of its flexibility, and for most of our past clients, their need to clean up their existing data. And that upload tool is reusable, and meaning that you can also use it post go live or in production. So basically, just those 2 points, John. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I was just going to emphasize, we talked with a customer recently on the lessor side, but even in this space, the ability to mass upload. Think about the idea that you've acquired a fleet of vehicles, or you do a new fleet rental. You don't want to have to be entering in 100 or 200 different subleases or leases. The mass upload tool really has accelerated that process for our clients, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and I also want to point out, the idea of validation, and I think this is a really important one, and we're going to highlight that in certain part of the benefits. But understand, once validated is a big statement. And what the tool also allows you to do is validate the data, right? It gives you an opportunity to look across, since it's a spreadsheet or a tool that allows you to look across all of the data elements. You can check those data elements for completeness. Do you have all of the data that's required to set up the lease? Is that data valid or accurate? And is it appropriate? So you can begin to do the analytics and make sure that when you load the information into CLM, that it's, again, as I said, it's appropriate, accurate, and valid for what you want to do. And a lot of our folk, a lot of the customers that we see get a lot of benefits out of this. Over the programs that we've looked at, based on our experience, I'm going to highlight a few of these. You can all read them for yourselves, but I think one of the big areas that I'd like, maybe is this reduction of lease conversion effort. And maybe combined here, Carlo, with the validation, you can talk about kind of what we're seeing with customers. They get a 60% reduction in lease conversion effort, and then 95% of validation happens automatically. How is that possible?
So what our program does, John, is that internally and inherently, we use standard APIs in CLM. So CLM provides standard functions that does automatic validation to the values that you are entering, that it is aligned to what you have set up in SAP CLM, and it's mapped properly. So the two tools that we have developed, have two steps on validation. The first one, we're doing a mapping to a validation mapping from their legacy system to SAP CLM. And in the second step, SAP CLM further validates the information that you have entered by using the standard validation checks provided by the SAP CLM's standard APIs.
Fantastic. Another thing I think we hear a lot from clients is they want to get moving quickly. And the beauty of using the accelerators and the tools that we have, we found it can reduce the overall effort and time to implement by 3 months. What we have found over time is that many customers have to spend a lot of time validating that. In conjunction with this point over here, around 60% reduction of effort required from the business team. What we also hear from customers and influenced our development of these tools was, Bramasol, we've been down this road already. We've done other tools out in the marketplace. We've made our decisions around the accounting efforts. We don't want to have to go through that process again. We don't want to have to make those decisions again. And the accelerators and the tools and processes and methodology we've developed reduces the amount of time required from the business team by over 60%. And by doing that has also allowed us to often accelerate some of our implementations by as much as 3 months. And then finally, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail on a couple of things, but I wanted to highlight, you just saw the reduction in the tools that we developed for the 10K, 10Q disclosures. By using those tools, you can reduce your time to produce the tools, but also to produce your disclosures by 50% on average. So let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits. And I'm going to jump in here. Julio, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about what you do, because you play a special and unique role in a lot of the projects that we've done over these past few years with, gosh, Julio, what have we done? Well over a dozen, almost 24 of these different projects. You are the technical accounting and analytics. What role do you play in this process?
Yeah, so as we go into these projects, John, what I do and the team that I work with do is we essentially look at the accounting. So the accounting has to make sense, because it doesn't matter if you configure something. What matters is if you configure it correctly in accordance with whatever standard you're trying to achieve. So in this example, as we do the conversions, we make sure that you're not just compliant, but your accounting is in line with your internal company's accounting policy. So, we are not just looking at the IT and the software perspective, we're looking at your accounting processes to make sure that your processes make sense, both from an external reporting perspective, but also from your accounting policy perspective as well. A good example of that, John, is some companies have low value leases. Well, is the low value lease $5,000, the $2,000? And if so, we at Bramasol will configure that for you. So we want to make sure that you can report what your low value numbers are, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you have the numbers that are lined up correctly. And when somebody comes to ask you, well, why do you have it as 5,000? Then you say, okay, well, here's the detail. Here's all the assets that didn't get capitalized because of my low value lease policy election.
Yeah, and what's really great about this, Julio, is so many projects that you see at SAP focus heavily on the technical aspects, and these projects are really accounting projects that happen to have a technical tool that allows it and facilitates you to do that, whether it's one of our core areas, revenue accounting, or here on lease accounting. It's an accounting, it's a disclosure program, and your insights and analytics and thought process, you speak debits and credits versus labels, tables, and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, exactly. I think that sometimes on these projects, well, most of the time, is very well appreciated, because Bramasol speaks on both sides of the fence. We speak the technical architecture, but we also are capable of talking to the CFOs and controllers to make sure that we understand, like you said, the debits and credits, the reporting processes, the accounting and internal control processes as well.
Exactly. Carlo, talk to me a little bit about these lease loading times. We made some bold statements previously on the amount of time we think we can reduce. On average, our clients ask us to help and support them. Many of our programs have up to 1,500 leases. We often are supporting physically 200 to 300 leases, and we can reduce the amount of time using these accelerators and tools, right?
Yeah, John. I mean, it mentioned here, it takes a lot of effort to extract information from your existing legacy system, more so if it's manual. With our conversion tools, the first one, really, think about it, if you have accurate data, what we just need to do is just pull this information and automatically load it to CLM. That's just, as quick as you can get. If that doesn't fit you, we have an upload tool wherein you scan the key CLM data points, and that tool does the validation for you and automatically loads that information directly to SAP CLM. And with that, it does activate the contract. It could automatically evaluate the contract and provide you the numbers that you need.
Absolutely. And I want to, we talk about validation and disclosure and operation reports and reducing the amount of time it takes to do audits and compliance. And I think it's important to note, not just in the accelerators and the tools that we use, but the inherent qualities or the inherent nature of CLM as a tool. And I'm going to pick on one thing because Julio knows I love to pick on this example about currencies. And the fact that, you saw from Sarah that you can use up to 3 different types of currencies. You can have a contract currency, a group currency, or a reporting currency, and all of those can be different. A lot of packages, a lot of solutions don't allow you to do that. Having said that, in addition, in other packages or other solutions, you are now required to have 3, and we'll actually tell you why it's 6 in a moment. But Julio, if I'm correct, you need up to 3 different currencies, and you need to maintain and keep those currencies current between the various programs in SAP, between the GL, if you will, who's posting those expenses, right? So every month you have new expenses. Every month you have changes in currency rates, and you need to keep those accurate rather than have to reconcile those currency calculations every month. Wouldn't it be nice if they were all based on the same currency rate or exchange rate, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly is the one that you and I discussed a long time ago, and I can't remember if it was our friends from Texas with that large oil company or from Arkansas with the retail, the world's largest retail establishment. But the other thing is you have to keep really 6. And that's because you have to amortize that particular asset, and you have to use a consistent amortization rate as well as a consistent currency at the outset of the lease. And a lot of programs also don't allow you to do that, correct?
Yes, John, what you're referring to is monetary versus non-monetary. So we have the liabilities being a monetary liability, which means that you're using, the exchange rate, current exchange rate for period end reporting, versus the ROU asset, which is non-monetary. So you're using those at fixed historical rates when you started the lease. So yeah, very good point. A lot of softwares do not give that difference in functionality, and therefore you'll be doing the accounting incorrectly.
Yeah, and even more importantly, they have their own rates, you have your own rates, and even if you both use the same services, how do you know? So that reconciliation process becomes a challenge as well. So with that, I want to thank Julio and Sarah. We'll start wrapping up. I just want to remind you, why can we talk about these subjects and what does Bramasol bring to the table for you as a client? Well, we can connect the dots across the office of the CFO portfolio, from helping companies really implement tools and programs moving from ECC to S/4HANA, or from third-party solutions onto a tier 1 SAP ERP. We provide those services. We've talked a lot about our deep expertise in leasing through REFX. It is both a tool we can show you for lessee and lessor accounting, and we have a couple of great videos for you to check out on lessor accounting, and that includes both real estate as well as some unique approaches to lessor accounting for equipment. We believe that the world is moving towards the solutions economy, moving away from buying things as a box or something to a recurring revenue model, whether it's the customer driving that from wanting more leasing and wanting to lease assets to provide flexibility and manage their expenses more real time, or companies like yours wanting to move to different business models to expand their reach. We can provide and have a specific view of that. Check out our digital solutions economy videos, and we provide a complete BRIM practice around revenue and innovation management. We are the world's leaders in SAP revenue accounting. and have done over 100 projects in this space. And one of the things that we're able to do and is unique about Bramasol is our ability to connect revenue accounting and lease accounting, because they have some very interesting integration points. In some ways, they're the same, two sides of the same coin. In some ways, they're actually, in lessor accounting in particular, kind of the same thing and have implications. And finally, we talk about treasury risk management. We focus heavily on cash and risk management, helping companies optimize things like straight-through payments, cash management, banking management, really rationalizing all of that. And we use our advisory services, both accounting and business processes, to help companies like yours really take advantage of the power of the intelligent enterprise for finance. So I'd like to wrap up. We know that companies are increasingly moving to leveraging recurring payment models, leasing in particular, but subscriptions, and that SAP provides an integrated solution that provides end-to-end visibility and complete lifecycle management. We at Bramasol have deep lease accounting experience combined with experience in accelerators to improve your time to value and increase your ROI. Our dashboard and disclosure tools will reduce the time and improve the accuracy that's required for you to submit your ASC 842, IFRS 16, or any of your local GAAP reporting. So what do you do now? Well, if you want to know where to start, check out our health checks. Check out our website at bramasol.com. We offer health checks on leasing and can provide you some great insights on where to first start and how to get this moving. We also have a number of different webinars. I encourage you to go check out our website and YouTube. We have our top 5 webinars on lease accounting. So dial into those. You'll see a lot more information. Not only you can check out this recording, but you can learn a lot more about lessor lessee accounting and some of the intricacies of that. So with that, I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Julio, Carlo, and Sarah, who have joined us from all over the globe, all the way down in South Africa to the Philippines and Houston, Texas. I want to thank you all for this great webinar, and I want to thank all of you for joining us, and I hope that you will make it a great day.